is time for Pot Talk with Joe Barton.
I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Growing marijuana in my yard. Got little pots of pipe spread out all over the lot, 'cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Well, I got the seed from Mexico. Stick it in some dirt and let it grow. Put it in my garden with my peppers and my peas, and I get all the smoke I need to breathe. 'Cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Growing marijuana in my yard. We'll keep it where no one can see, so let's keep this between you and me. But I'm growing marijuana in my yard. 'Cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. I can't tell my boss or I'll get fired. I don't grow much, just what I use. I work all day, and when I'm through, I smoke some marijuana from my yard. Now the policeman, he wants to talk to me. He says, how you gonna smoke up all that weed? He says, money's what you're in it for. Don't you know we're in a war? Come go haul your ass downtown with me. I said, hey man, what is it to you? How do I infringe on what you do? Well, I beg your pardon if you're offended by my garden, but I just can't grow Prozac in my yard. So I grow my own medicine in my yard. I give some to my neighbor for his heart. Share it with my grandma who keeps it from her son, 'cause we all know that stuff's against the law. Well, now there's nothing growing in my yard, 'cause cops took all my land and both my cars. Now I have to buy my pot from a teenager in the parking lot who's growing marijuana in his yard. Oh, anyone can grow it in their yard. Think I can show you how, it ain't hard. Never mind the president, let's overgrow the government and all grow marijuana in our yard. Let's grow some marijuana in our yard.
Hello, here we are doing another episode of Pot Talk, and we want to remind all you people out there, too many of our brothers and sisters are sitting in jail for marijuana, and we want you to do something about it. Start writing the politicians, tell them this has got to stop. They're ruining kids' lives. A kid busted for marijuana can't get scholarships, so that's hurting all our kids just for getting busted for a little bit of pot when the government knows. In fact, in New York, in 1974, when they supposedly repealed the Rockefeller laws, our legislature said marijuana has little harmful effect or no harmful effect at all for marijuana use. Yet they then said they were going to decriminalize 2 ounces. How many people have been busted for 2 ounces and it hasn't been decriminalized? That's all bull. Many kids have gotten busted for less than 2 ounces, and they've had their lives destroyed, have been put on probation, gone to jail. The courts pay no attention to what the legislature said, and even that, if the legislature says it has no harmful effects, then why is it illegal even if you had pounds of it? And why do they say, oh, it's not harmful, but you can only have 2 ounces? Well, if a person wanted to grow it in their backyard, we'd all know that the oil from marijuana cures quite a few diseases. So if you wanted to make enough oil to cure some diseases, you need to grow pretty much pot. It takes a pound of marijuana to make 50 ounces of oil. So even the legislature with their 2 ounces is bogus when they admit that it has no harmful effect. If it has no harmful effect, why are they putting people in jail for marijuana? And real soon, hopefully, Dana's going to call, but Dana's a bit flaky when it comes to calling on time. He'll give you a little information on the marijuana thing that's going on down in New York, the pot parade, which he used to run every year, but then they put Dana in jail for marijuana. He was supplying medical marijuana to different people, and they arrested him and put him in jail, and we'll have him talk about that when we get him on the line.
I wonder if he's working with the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies called MAPS, and with the
I doubt it.
Hefter Research Institute, of which Dr. Ken is a co-founder. Wasn't he doing something to get people off of heroin? It was some kind of...
Cures Not Wars.
What was it? What was he working?
Cures Not Wars was the organization that he ran to...
Right.
But he had one drug that he was using.
Ibogaine.
Ibogaine, yeah, Ibogaine.
Yeah. I didn't
which
hear
they
that
didn't mention in that on the other show. They didn't mention Ibogaine at all.
In this article, it talked about ketamine and MDMA. Does Ibogaine work for depression?
Yeah,
it's supposedly a cure for addiction. It's another psychedelic cure for addiction. I think, as I remember it, it was once you took Ibogaine, you didn't want to get high for a long time. I think is how it worked.
And it did make people more cheerful, and it did uplift spirits.
Here he is.
Oh, are you there, Dana?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. We've been telling people that you're now restarting up the pot parade. Why don't you give the people up here a little information? You're on Woodstock Television and Woodstock 104
FM.
That's great. Well, we do want people to come down for the parade. It would not be fair to the people who kept it going in my absence to say that I'm restarting it.
Oh, all right. I wasn't aware that they kept it going, but that's good.
No, you have to keep it going to basically it's grandfathered in.
But that's May 1st.
No.
May 2nd.
It's always the first Saturday of May.
Oh, all right.
So every year is different. Every year is different.
But this year
last year was the 3rd.
This year it's the 2nd.
Right.
And
But it's just a Saturday. When it turns to May, look for the Saturday and you'll find us.
Well, where is it going to be this year?
Well, the actual rally after the parade is in Union Square, which has been for a few years. The start this year is at 32nd and Broadway, just a corner, right next, kind of opposite Greeley Park.
Okay.
And we're going to wrap around that corner. The front of the parade is going to extend down to 31st Street, and the parade back of that point is going to go. We're going to put these different contingents together, right? And they're going to go back against traffic. It's weird. On 32nd Street between 5th and 6th. So, actually, there's a court decision that we can't ever march up 5th Avenue against traffic, even though people did it on December 17th. So the cops can ignore the court decision that they went to a lot of trouble to get anytime they want.
You're leaving a lot of dead air here, Dana. Just keep talking.
If you don't, I will. We just read a long article
Ask the questions.
Okay, we just read a long article about how illegal drugs are treating mental illness, and I asked my colleagues here about the work that you were doing with one that was not mentioned. They mentioned LSD, they mentioned ketamine, they mentioned psilocybin, and they mentioned marijuana, but they didn't mention ibogaine.
Ibogaine.
Right. Well, that, we just had an experience today where this guy got back to me and said, there was this group of people, and they wouldn't really come clean as to who they were, but they didn't want me calling them up. And he said there were politically correct drugs, and he was referring to MDMA.
Right. That's what this article was about.
And MDMA doesn't work as well for post-traumatic stress disorder as ibogaine.
And what
ibogaine is mostly known because it stops heroin in basically 30 minutes. I mean, it basically... What is your name? I'm sorry.
Mrs. Barton?
Paula Gloria. That's Paula Gloria, my wife, Paula.
Paula Gloria. Okay,
Yes.
Paula. From the general public, they know from like the Law and Order Special Victims Unit episode where the guy takes ibogaine and gets off of heroin overnight, that it's good for heroin. They don't know what else it's good for. It's also good for cocaine and crystal meth. Okay, no surprise there, because those are at least drugs. What's really surprising is it gets to be good for a bunch of other stuff. It gets to be good for bipolar and post-traumatic stress disorder. That's because it regenerates dopamine neurons. It causes dopamine neurons that are damaged to grow back. And the really exciting thing that we just found was that extremely low doses of ibogaine reverse Parkinson's disease. So we had a guy who heard about this on the radio and got in touch with us. He's in the African American community. And somehow he got his hands on root bark capsules. Now, it didn't get rid of his tremor, which is unfortunate. Apparently, the tremor represents a kind of an end stage of damage that cannot be reversed. But his walking, his gait, and his diction are improved. This is a big deal because,
Of course.
Parkinson's disease is the second most prevalent neurodegenerative disorder after Alzheimer's. And it's very low dose. Far too little to have a psychedelic effect. Far too little to block potassium channels, which is the reason that when you give ibogaine, you have to give it in a hospital or a clinic because it has effects on the heart. So we found out that just 4 milligrams, you can't even see 4 milligrams, Joe.
Yeah, I know.
4 milligrams is so little, it's like a speck. It's a microscopic amount. 4 milligrams of ibogaine twice a day. So after 30 days, 240 milligrams. About 1/6 or 1/7 of what we have to give for heroin, all in one sitting. So this is a huge discovery. The other things that ibogaine are good for are antiviral, antibiotic, anti-tumor, and antifungal effects. And also it does something to autoimmune disorders like Crohn's and multiple sclerosis. So if you have AIDS, I'm not supposed to say this, but I will say that I can say that the government is actually studying the synthetic ibogaine that they came up with in Albany. Stanley Glick came up with this other thing called 18MC. That is being studied to see what it will do to HIV in Brazil. But I will tell you off the record, but on the radio, that I have talked to Norina Walls, who keeps very careful notes, and she's taken cases where people had full-blown AIDS and reversed them to HIV. And this has to do with the fact that there's an autoimmune component in AIDS. With AIDS, some of the effects of AIDS are not just because your immune system is all screwy, but because your body is attacking itself. It's trying to get rid of the virus, and it's kind of like an allergic reaction with the effects of the virus, which are not good. And that's, for instance, what screws people up with multiple sclerosis. So we've got some cases where people's MS dramatically improved. So, these are also conditions, some of them, that people use medical marijuana for. And I have to be, as a person who's been for pot for 50 years, I have to come clean and say ibogaine may work better for some of these things than good old marijuana. But I would much rather smoke marijuana. And as soon as I get off parole, you can bring me a fatty Joe.
And I will. And why don't you, while we're on this subject of marijuana, why don't you tell some people out there about your bus? I'm always telling people that we want to free all marijuana prisons. We don't want any more going in jail.
My big problem was I ran into a place where they said you can't be a medical marijuana activist because there's no such thing as medical marijuana. And that was like, it was strange. It was in Nebraska where you kind of expect them to be somewhat backwards. It's Wahoo. But it was also in the next county over from Madison, Wisconsin. I was busted twice because patients don't stop eating marijuana just because somebody has a legal problem. And they gave me ultimately 2 years. We fought them to a draw. They gave the guy who didn't fight them 18 months. But see, I'd already done 9 months when I got them 2 years. And that 9 months, unfortunately, they gave me milk every morning for breakfast. You get awful hungry if you don't eat, right?
Been there, done that.
So I would eat the milk, and I kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker until I had a heart attack. The day they were going to take me to prison, fell over dead. For 3.5 minutes, my heart stopped.
Ooh.
Then they revived me, but they had to put me on induced coma, which is very expensive. And after they run up a bill of $114,000, the county cried uncle and gave me the appeal bond they hadn't been willing to give me all that time. And I was out. I was actually, my die-in was the most effective, my most effective civil disobedience I ever did. I was actually out, but then they reversed, they reneged on the promise to suspend the sentence.
Once you looked healthy, huh?
Well, no, it was just they got pressured by Nebraska.
Mm.
Nebraska was crazy. Nebraska basically took the position that I was Al Capone. Nebraska and that one lady from Danielle Meister, who recommended 4 and 4 in Wisconsin. But she was talking to the people in Nebraska. And they had a vendetta that went back to this federal case in 1979 where all the charges were thrown out against this 24-person conspiracy because of illegal wiretaps. Now, we tend to think that, when the government, breaks the law, NSA, Snowden, that's a bad thing, right? That, they should not be able to bring this stuff into court because they got it illegally, right?
They do it all the time.
No, these guys said that was just a technicality. right? So I should have gone to prison then, and they were like, they've been upset ever since. And this is the basic problem. The government in this country is very upset about me.
Well, they
Nothing I
haven't
can do
been
about that.
they haven't been dead against a lot of us.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the point I'm trying to say is, if you really want to do something, come out to the parade. We're also doing stuff in the 2 weeks before, calling the 2 weeks the extravaganza.
What are you doing? Tell people.
Well, I think there's going to be a press conference Sunday the 19th in Broadway Square, announcing run-up. Normal's doing Normal is doing a political panel at 420, and I also understand there's some unscripted smoke ins going on somewhere in the city. I can't really say where, but you could probably find out. It's 420, right? Then we're going to have a thing on Wednesday. Let me see. I should really memorize this stuff. I know that Wednesday, I think we're doing our thing on the history of marijuana prohibition, connecting bad people from Adolf Hitler to Joseph Goebbels to Harry Anslinger to Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. Against such people as John Kennedy, who of course was a medical marijuana smoker.
Really?
Yeah, he had very bad back, and he smoked pot. And,
Like the Pope.
Well, the thing about JFK was that a lot of people suspect that it wasn't just that he was against the war in Vietnam. And they really wanted to go into Vietnam, and they felt that after the Bay of Pigs, he couldn't be relied upon. It was a cultural thing. They just didn't like him. And, he smoked pot and fucked Marilyn Monroe. He was a hippie, in other words.
And I know for a fact he also took LSD.
Yeah, well, his brother actually came out. His brother was a friend of, he kind of like got shot under mysterious circumstances. His brother was a friend of Allen Ginsberg, who went on the television in the summer of '68 saying marijuana is less harmful than tobacco. So somehow every time, as long as like Anslinger was alive, things kept happening to people. And, as long as J. Edgar Hoover was around, things kept happening to people who bucked the orthodoxy, and they weren't pretty, So they were going to have like a thing about that. And then, there's going to be a series of a dance event on Friday the 24th. There's a party on the 25th. There's another party at La Rev.
Where it is going to be held?
Well, go to our website, and you'll see them.
What's your website?
Tell people your
Well,
website.
they have the cannabis culture. They have cannabisparade.org and also Cures Not Worse. Cures-not-worse.org.
I'll get this in.
There's going to be a High Times, not a High Times party. It's not a High Times party, but there's going to be a party hosted by some leading personalities in the magazine who are going to
Have fun.
well, no, they're going to there's going to be a party in a place that's smoke friendly. Let's put it that way, where we're going to be able to raise money to defray the cost of the parade.
Dana, I'd like to
There's some more
compliment.
stuff during the week, and we're going to end up being at the parade the morning of
May
around
2nd.
11 o'clock in the morning on May 2nd. I want everybody to come and participate. If you can, we'd like you to make a little contribution per marcher, because it costs money to put it on, but you don't have to. In the Pride Parade, by the way, they were getting $2.50, and they just increased it to $10 a person. But we're only asking for $2.50 if you could pay it. And we got some interesting people down in it's Dan Fogler, the guy who did movies on peyote. James Lane, who is running against the guy who would indict Garner. We're supposed to have a Cannabis Cup band. I don't have a list in front of me, but we have got some great speakers and great musical acts. So it'll be a great day. I want everybody to come. What else do you want to know?
Well, I was hoping to hear a little more about your bust, how it all went down, and...
Well, there was a problem. It really was because this guy didn't want to go. And when people don't want to do something, they don't prepare properly. So we were a little nervous because we had been stopped the day before with a headlight and talked our way out of it.
Yeah. I don't understand what you just said, but...
That was really what did us in. Somebody was ill-prepared. And the second time, we had a fellow that just needed to stop and pee. And he didn't tell me when we were in Dubuque. When we could have stopped, he announced it like, he said, "You mean there's no rest areas in Wisconsin?" "No, there's no rest areas here, man." So we had to stop in a little town. And there was a hyperactive cop who, was looking for people who might have been, imbibing a few drinks. It was already 10 to 10. He saw an out-of-state plate and decided to check us out.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they always like the
It was
out-of-state.
really too bad about the guy with who needed to pee, though, because he got bladder cancer and died. He was a medical marijuana patient. And as soon as they took away his medicine, he got galloping cancer and died. Terrible.
Was he
But they
smoking?
don't care if they kill patients.
How was...
Actually, there's a certain faction of the anti-marijuana people who advocates the death penalty for pot. Let's just be brutally frank.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
They
insane. We
want
do...
all marijuana people to die.
It's insane. We do... I've done many... My show's called Pot Talk, and I've covered this issue and about Anslinger and how it's all been a criminal operation right from the very inception.